Hello and welcome to Daniel and Revelation Bible Prophetic series. We are on session 5 and we are on chapter 2. Welcome to Babylon, and we are here to study chapter 2. So we are going to study Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So second chapter actually deals with Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now in the second year of the Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. So I want you to remember how long is the training, Daniel's training was. Like initially in the first chapter we were told that it is a 3-year training. So now what we are seeing here in the first verse here is, now in the second year of the reign, Nebuchadnezzar's reign. That means Daniel's training is not yet complete. So I just want to make a point here. So even no matter how you calculate whether the first year of accession or the end of the year, but no matter how you look at it, so it seems to me that Daniel's training is not yet over. So I just want to make a point. I'll come back to that. Second chapter, verse 1. Now in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, here Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled that his sleep left him. This is not a normal dream, so it looks like he had some kind of a nightmare or something, and he was so much troubled and his sleep left him. That is the background for this chapter. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. So when king had this problem, some nightmare, whatever, so he want to know the meaning of the dream. He want to understand what is that. So he called for all his cabinet, which includes magicians, astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans. I think these people were telling the king for a lot of stories all this time. Like, they could talk to the spirits, they could talk to gods. They might be telling a lot of things to the king. So now is the test for all of them. So king summoned everyone to his court. All the magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, Chaldeans, the king, to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. So the point also, remember, I want to make a point here, that when they called all these magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, Daniel was not among them. That is one of the reasons I tell you that, because his training was not yet over, otherwise he would be there. So his training might be not complete yet, so he is not there. So let's look at some of these characters. So the Babylonian magicians, what they do, the Babylonian magicians performed serious functions, supposedly in touch with the world of the spirits and gods. These individuals were the advisors to the king on virtually every matter. So they employed rites and spells intent to heal, exorcise demons, or counter an evil spell because evil spell placed upon sufferer. So sometimes these magicians do all kinds of things, like because they interact with the evil spirits or the spirit world or the other side, small g gods. They have some powers. I'm not denying that. So what they are doing is they will be interacting with all of them. So now let's continue. Omens were studied in order to understand the future, and astrology played an important part in this activity. Especially if you look in the Middle East and the Eastern countries, people had a lot of superstition. So they go to all kinds of magicians, astrologers, and all that. So I think we see the same kind of group of people here. The techniques such as examining a sheep's liver, hepatoscopy, also were employed in decision making. So these are very strange things. I never knew that they do this kind of a thing, looking into a liver of a dead animal or kill an animal and look into to see the direction, the path they should take and all that. So they do a lot of stuff. I'm not going on an extensive detail. I'm just giving an idea, a glimpse at what these people usually do. So one of the things that I came across is that they look into the sheep's liver to tell in making a decision. So do you find such kind of things in Bible? In Ezekiel chapter 22, 21 and verse 21, you read about this. For the king of Babylon stood at the parting of the way. That means you have to understand this language from the Bible. So king is there on a fork. So you want to take either left or right. So you want to take a way. At the head of the two ways, to use divination, he made his arrows bright. He consulted with images. He looked into the liver. So this clearly tells us that what I was talking about. So the heptoscopy. So these people, these Babylonian magicians, they included all kinds of techniques. So some of those are recorded by Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 21. We can look at. But anyway, that is not our main point. But I just want to run through this list of people because we'll be coming across this group of people. And then the second group, sometimes you hear, depending on the translation of the Bible, so there's somebody called enchanters. With their magic spells and incantations were believed to be able to communicate with the spirit world. So those are the enchanters. And then the other group of people are astrologers. So the word astrologers is also used in a restricted sense to delineate a class of priests. Astrologers, magicians, soothsayers, or wise men. There seems to be a significant overlap in the duties they perform. So although we hear all these names grouped together, but when you look at it, when king asked for help, he didn't ask for a particular group of people, but he summoned everybody. So all these people came and stood before the king. We are going to see when they fail to do their job, king is going to be angry and try to kill everyone. So my point is there seems to be a significant overlap in the duties they perform, although we come across these different names. And I just want to allude to one other thing here. The astrologers, at the end, towards the end, you see that one of the things they do, they are called as a wise men. You remember the wise men story in the Bible, in the gospel accounts, the wise men came from the east. I believe these are the wise men that the Bible was talking about. And in fact, later we are going to see who will become the head of these wise men. That's Daniel. And Daniel might have prophesied all these future kingdoms, and there might have been some interest in studying these future things. And I believe some of these wise men really looked at these astrologers in the skies, and looking at the stars, they figured out that there's going to be this king that probably Daniel might have told them. So I personally believe that. And in all this, where was Daniel? So the king summoned, but the question is, maybe I might have already answered this. Had Daniel completed his 3-year training program? No, it doesn't look like it. But in chapter 1, verse 5, we see it was like a 3-year program. So this 3-year program, the training, but here we see that it was in the 2nd year. So I don't believe that Daniel completed his training. So that's why they didn't even bother to call him when king asked or summoned all these magicians or all the wise men to come and stand before him. So Daniel wasn't there. So Daniel and his friends had not completed their 3 years of training, and that is why they were not called before the king with the other wise men. So verse 3, and the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. So here is a problem. The problem is, when we look at different versions of the Bible, each version come up with a slightly different translation. So we have to now look into a couple of versions to get this actual meaning. So I in fact wrote the Hebrew word here, yada, that is to know. So the question is, some Bibles or the Bible teachers, they say that king forgot the dream. So what they say is king forgot the dream, and he is asking them to tell the dream and also the meaning of it. But it doesn't appear to me that way. So I'm going to give you my reasons. So here what he's saying is, I have had a dream and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. So in fact, when you say this yada, the meaning of this yada is, this word is used in several other places. So let me give an example. When Adam knew his wife, they begot a son. Okay. So the word knew there is also ada. So that means it's an intimate knowledge, intimate relationship. So what the word know is a kind of, it's not just a understanding, but it is a more deeper with the meaning involved in it. So that's what my point is. So if you just look for yada, it is more than just knowing the dream, but what he's asking for is, I want to know more deep of this dream, or I want to understand the meaning of the dream. So if I would translate, I would do it differently. But there is another version in the Bible like NLT. As they stood before the king, he said, I have had a dream that deeply troubles me and I must know what it means. So NLT did a clear meaning of this particular word. So I just pointed this out here. So I'm going to give you different versions. Sometimes I point out, see here I said the NLT at the beginning of that verse. Sometimes I say KJV, sometimes other verse. If I do not say anything, all my scriptures are from NKJV. It's a New King James Version. That is the version I use and I like it. It is very close to King James, but it brings the latest essence of the language style and all that. So if I don't say a particular version, it is pretty much from New King James Version. Otherwise, I will tell you what version I'm using. Like this version, this verse is NLT. So here once, let me read one more time. So as they stood before the king, he said, I have had a dream that deeply troubles me and I must know what it means. So that makes perfect sense when you get to the next verse. So in verse 4, then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. So you remember this verse I told you earlier? So this is the parting from Hebrew to Aramaic. So this book was written in is a bilingual, as I said, like first chapter in Hebrew and until the second chapter, fourth verse, it is all in Hebrew. But now these Chaldeans came before the king and now they are talking in Aramaic to the king. And Daniel didn't want to convert that or translate that into Hebrew as he is writing in Hebrew. So he is just because he is well versed with this Aramaic also. So now this book, now he is writing in Aramaic. So that's what it is happening here. So verse 4, we talked about that in the previous sessions. So then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream and we will give the interpretation. So it is very clear that king is asking for the interpretation and now they are saying, okay, tell us the dream and we are going to give you the interpretation. It doesn't sound to me so wise because, think about this. If somebody tells you some dream, right, you can come up with your own interpretation and nobody is going to question, nobody is going to say that you are saying it wrong, right? So anybody can come up with any meaning of a dream, but that's what king thought here. So let's see what he's saying. In verse 5, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. This is from KJV. I put this verse from KJV. What it says is, this thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So this is Daniel 2:5 and I picked this from KJV, King James Version. So most of the time, because of this King James Version, or at least hundreds of years, people use this version. Because of this translation right there, the thing is gone from me. People understood it as that king forgot his dream. So read this verse and see the meaning of it. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. So which kind of tells us that as if he forgot the dream. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So because people used King James Version for so many years, for hundreds of years, at least 400 years, this particular verse had an interpretation that the king forgot his dream, but I do not think so. So the thing, if you look at the word Mila, now it is an Aramaic, it's not an Hebrew, because you see, remember that now the original script is Aramaic. So if you look for the Mila, the word Mila, it's used elsewhere also. I didn't have time to bring in all that. It is like a king's order. You can even see, and if you open your Bibles in Daniel chapter 3, verse 20, 22, around that area, you see that the Mila is used as a king's order or king's command. So now the command is gone from me. If you read it as a command instead of a thing, so now it makes a different meaning. You look at this verse and let's read this verse with Mila as a command of the king. The king answered and said, I gave you this command that whatever I am saying is not going to change. What is that command? If you not make known unto me the dream with its interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces and your house shall be made a dunghill. So you see, it is not the thing that has gone out. It is not the dream, But what he is saying is the command has gone from me. That means I decreed a command that you need to interpret this dream, give the interpretation of this dream. Otherwise, you will be cut in pieces, and your house will be made ash heap. So now let's look at the same in a different translation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. You see, different translation is saying differently. So my decision is firm. That means whatever the command I have given, that is firm. I am not going to change because of your bargaining. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made as an ash heap. The ash heap is a slightly polished word, but the actual word is a dunghill. In villages, if you go to some remote villages, you see people pile up all this the manure and all kinds of dung and everything in a heap. So that's what the meaning was. King was so furious. He is just saying that your houses will be made like that, a rubble, a refuge of heaps. That's what he said. So if you look at this translation, what is this translation? So this is New King James Version. Here you see that it is called as my decision is firm. So anyway, so now here we see again going back to NLT for the same verse, chapter 2 verse 5. But the king said to the astrologers, I am serious about this. You see the translation, it changed. I am serious about this. In King James Version, it said the thing is gone from me. So the thing is not the dream. So that's what I'm trying to highlight because of the way it was written in KJV. So again, once it's the same point. If you don't tell me what the dream was and what it means, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. So it makes very clear that it is not the dream, it is the command that went out. So verse 6, however, if you tell the dream, so the opposite side of it, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. That is a big challenge right now. If anybody could step in from this crowd of these magicians, astrologers, and a group of these people, they could be honored. They receive a great honor. But if they cannot tell, now the problem is he's going to kill all of them. So Nebuchadnezzar is very mad right now. So verse 7, they answered again. You see, they answered again. So let's say, for hypothetically, if king said to them, I forgot this dream, tell me this interpretation. So if they come and do this one, what it is reading in verse 7, they answered and said, let the king tell us the servants his dream. He will be even super mad. I am telling you that I forgot the dream and you are asking me to tell the dream. What are you talking about? So it doesn't make sense. That's why I'm kind of highlighting the difference in the translation. So anyway, so verse 7, they answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream and we will give its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. Because I made this decree that you need to tell, but you are just keep on bargaining to buy time. Some people commented out that, because right now king is in an angry mode. So if they could delay a little bit longer, maybe his anger could go down, and instead of killing, maybe he realized killing all these people may not be a good idea. So he may pacify. So that's what he's saying. So don't do that. I am not going to, don't try to buy time. That is what he is saying in verse 7. So verse 8, the king answered and said, I know of certain that ye would gain the time because ye see the thing is gone from me. So again, the same thing, it is talking about the decree, the command. So in that was in King James Version. So I want to point that out again. So in verse 9, if you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream. So, in fact, he is making his case. Probably these people might have told lies to the king. So now he don't want to take any chances, especially with the dream that he is horrified, especially with the dream that he want to know what is going to happen and things like that. So he don't want to tell the dream. If these people are really capable of interpreting this dream, they should be able to come up with the dream. Of course, nobody will have asked that kind of a demand so far. So So for you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream. So you see one theme going on. King keep on asking, tell me the dream, and I shall know, you can give me its interpretation. So he is very clear what he's saying there, right there. So Daniel 2:9. So the Chaldeans answered, and the king, these people are frustrated now. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. I agree with them perfectly. There is no one who could tell this dream from other person's mind. No matter what they try to do, no matter what they do, so at least their answer is right here. There is not a man on earth who could tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler had ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. So verse 11, it is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with the flesh. So they are making it to the king very clear. So this is not possible. So only gods can do this. Only gods can tell, and nobody in human flesh can tell other person's dream. So they try to convince the king, but so that is what they are trying to do here. Verse 12, for this reason the king was angry and very furious. As I said, he started with very angry because his sleep was interrupted, and he came out and he was angry, and now because these people could not answer anything to him, so he was even angry. For this reason the king was angry and furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Wow, such an edict, like kill everybody, so he don't care now, because nobody is telling him the dream and his interpretation. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise man, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill him. So it appears that as if they started already killing some people. Verse 13 says, so the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men. So it reads as if they started killing some people, or probably they might have killed some people, but I don't think that way. What it means is they are gathering all these people to a place where they could execute everybody. So that is what it means. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men. Although it says they began killing, I do not think personally they started killing. They are just grouping all these people to a place where they could execute all of them at once. And they sought Daniel and his companions also to kill them. So this tells us that Daniel was not there in the first group, in the group of people that attended the king. And verse 14, then with counsel and wisdom Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard. He is the chief executioner here. Arioch is the chief executioner. So Daniel answered him, who had gone out to kill the wise men. Daniel asked him, what has happened? So 15, he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is this decree from the king so harsh or urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So far, Daniel did not even know what happened, right? So that is why Daniel is asking this chief executioner, why are you so hasty? Why are you running and trying to kill everybody? So he explained to Daniel that this is from the king, and he wanted to kill every wise man in the kingdom. Now you look at this. Daniel has not completed his training, but now he is under the wise men. He is getting the training from their gurus or the teachers. When the teachers are killed, now what is the point of having the students left out, right? So now when that to that point, now they are after Daniel also. They want to kill Daniel also. So that is what is happening here. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king the interpretation. It is kind of a very bold move, but anyways, if he doesn't do it anyway, he is getting killed. So he went to the king and said, Lord, give me some time. And then the Daniel went to his house and made this decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. You remember those three friends? We talked about these three friends, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So, those other names, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were also called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego by their Babylonian names elsewhere. So Daniel went to them and says, okay, let's have a fasting prayer. So that is what we need today. So probably they didn't eat, they didn't do anything else. They started praying. So that is what they're doing now. In verse 18, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So the only hope Daniel and his friends, or for that matter for any of these wise men now, is only if somebody intervenes. Now he need to pray. So that's what he is doing. He went and prayed. Of course, we are going to see the character of Daniel. He prayed 3 times a day. Elsewhere we are going to study later. And when there was going to be a command that nobody should pray in this land, and yet he went there and prayed. So, we are going to study all that. But I'm just trying to tell you that Daniel was a man of prayer. Verse 19, then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. I believe that, Daniel that night, along with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, prayed earnestly. When they prayed earnestly, God revealed to them, or revealed the dream to Daniel in a night vision. I believe Daniel got this dream just like King got this dream. So now he had this dream, and also he understood, he got the meaning from God. So now he had the answer. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. The moment he had the answer, he was so happy. Think about this. They were actually about to die. The chief executioner was gathering these people to bring them to a place where he could execute, and that is the time he intervened and asked for time. And now when he had the answer, you think about the joy in the whole group, especially at least in this group of 4 people, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were happy. And now you see what Daniel is doing. The first thing he is going to praise God. In verse 20, Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his." He is not claiming that he is some super guy. He is saying that it is from God. Without God, he is nothing there. He could be dead. And 21, and he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. So Daniel is making it clear that only God could reveal certain things. Only God could tell these things, that what is going to happen. And when he revealed, he is just praising God. And also he knew the meaning of the dream. That's why even in his praise, he is acknowledging that he removes kings and raises up kings. He is clearly saying that. So, and also he knew the prophecies. As I said, we studied extensively the first 3 sessions about how this Babylonian captivity happened, the Babylonian exile happened, that how Daniel came here, because it was foretold before. So now he knows all that prophecies, and he makes a point. The verses that I highlighted in red, he removes kings and raises up kings. Daniel knew that God can do that. And verse 23, I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and you have now made known to me what we asked for. For you have made known to us the king's demand. So here Daniel was earnest in his prayer, and now he had the answer. He is very happy. He is praising and thanking God for giving the wisdom to understand the dream, and revealing the dream and making him understand the meaning of the dream. So now verse 24, therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel first told this guy, the chief executioner, because he is ready to kill all this the wise men in Babylon. So he went and told this Arioch. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. So Daniel needs to be taken before the king. So he told him, take me to the king, and I'm going to tell the meaning, and I'm going to explain this to the king. Now comes the interesting part. So then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, here is what my point is. You see what he is saying to the king. I have found a man. See, now this guy, chief executioner, he was ready to kill everybody until Daniel came and stopped him and asked for extra time. Now, but what is he doing now? He went to the king and said, he's patting himself on the back and said, King, I found a man. So I solved your problem, you see. I found a man. So he's starting with as if he has done some great things. So I found a man among the captives of Judah, who will make known to the king the interpretation. So the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. So as I told you earlier, king uses these two names, Daniel and Belteshazzar. One is Daniel is the Hebrew name and Belteshazzar is the Babylonian name. So king tells Daniel, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? So king questions Daniel, and Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. It is very clear, because they cannot declare to the king. Nobody can do that. And he is not taking any credit for this. Like the chief executioner has said, I found a person here for you, king. So he is not taking any credit. Here he clearly gives credit to where it belongs. You see 28. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. So his answer is very clear. He is just giving glory to God. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the later days. Your dream and visions of your head upon your bed were these. So he started to tell what has happened. As for you, king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets hath made known to you what will be. The moment he heard this verse, king, on your bed, thoughts came to you that what will happen in the future. Immediately, I think Nebuchadnezzar might have, paid more attention. Maybe he came to the edge of his seat to listen, because that is exactly his thoughts were, what would happen towards the end. So with that thoughts, he went to bed and he had this dream. And now Daniel says, not only the dream, he actually is telling the king, these are the thoughts that you went to bed with. So that is astonishing to reveal the king's mind completely. So this is not the first time we are reading that somebody is telling what is in the king's mind, or what is spoken, or what is thought of in the king's mind. We see that in other places, Elijah the prophet was telling what was spoken in the king of Syria. When he planned to attack Israel, he tells the prophet, this enemy is planning an attack on you. So we have studied this kinds of stories before. So this is not the first time we are seeing it here. So verse 30, but as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. So Daniel is just trying to understand his status, understand his position. It is not because of Daniel's wisdom it was revealed. It is because God revealed it to Daniel, so he is able to explain. So he is very clear to tell that I have no more wisdom than anybody. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. So you, O king, were watching, and behold a great image. So I think it's getting more tense for the king, because exactly this is what he saw. He is telling now, O king, you are watching, and behold a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. In some translations, it says its form was terrible. Whatever the language, it is not terrible. I believe it's awesome. So some translations may be slightly different. But anyway, so the point is, king, when he was watching, in his dream, there was a great image. And this image was very splendor and excellent, stood before him. And this was really awesome. And here you see image. So here is a picture, a image with a golden head, the head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, and legs of iron, and then feet and of iron and clay mixed. So we are not going to get into the detail of individual level right now, because there is going to be another vision that Daniel gets in chapter 7 and 8 and all during that, in the second segment of the book of Daniel. There it was explained even with a greater precision and detail. Right now, the details were not given. I mean, the names are not given, but yet it conveys the message. I'm going to explain that to you. So here he has this image. Now 32. The image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze. That's what we just saw, the image. 33. Its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So now it has come down to the feet, and the feet was of what? Iron and partly of clay. And while you are watching this image, that's 34, you watched while a stone was cut out without hands. That means nobody throw this rock or a stone. It came without any human intervention. In other words, it just came out from nowhere without anybody throwing the stone. It was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. So I just want to keep you in mind this stone, talking about the stone. Bible talks about extensively Jesus as the rock of salvation. He is depicted as a rock. So if you can underline that, that is why. And Jesus was born of a virgin, and that is why we also see here it is talking about verse 34. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, while struck the image of its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. So verse 35. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together. So what are this? Let me explain. So now we have this gold, we have this silver, we have all these metals, different kinds of metals. They are all crushed and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So that is what we are going to study in the book of Revelation. So the book of Revelation, chapters 19, 20, and 21, towards the end of the book of Revelation, Jesus Christ is going to come back and establish his kingdom. He is going to take away all these kingdoms of this earth, and he establishes his kingdom. So this is the dream that we are going to see here. The stone that struck is depicting that it is going to be the kingdom that in the future of Jesus Christ. So we're going to study in detail when we get to that point. And now anyway, Daniel is going to explain. So verse 36, this is the dream. So he explained, this is the dream that king got. So now we need to know the interpretation, right? So now verse 36, this is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. I think king is now ready to listen, because now Daniel exactly told what king dreamt. So this is the dream, and there is he knows the dream. So there is no dispute. So he knows what exactly he dreamt. So now Daniel is ready to give the meaning, the interpretation. Verse 37, you, O king, are king of kings. For the God of heavens have given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And whatever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. So now he started explaining. So on this image, there is a head of gold, and he's now saying, you are the head of gold. You are the king of kings. And God has given you, God has made you as a king of kings. Because you remember, this is the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. We started with this chapter. So just before that, a year earlier, he defeated everybody, like the Assyrians in Carchemish, and then Egypt, and then Judah. So he made the vassal king there. So pretty much he occupied all the known world at that time, all the surrounding areas of that time. So now that's why he's saying, you are the king of kings. You have this power, you have the strength, you have the glory. God has given you all this, and you are this head of gold. Verse 39, but after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. So he is now telling, okay, after your kingdom, you remember what was this king starts before he go to bed? What is going to happen in the later days? So some scholars pointed out the worry that King Nebuchadnezzar had was his immediate success, the success that happened to him in a very short time. So his father Nabopolassar was a small king in one tiny area called Babylon. At the time, it was not even a kingdom or anything. It was a very small place. And within a very short period, now Nebuchadnezzar was now the king of all these kings. So now he got all this power, and he was wondering what is going to happen in the future. So that was one of the concerns for him. So now here he says that you are the king, you are the head of gold. So verse 39, but after you, that means after this kingdom or after you, shall arise another kingdom. So after Babylonian kingdom, he is saying there will be another kingdom inferior to yours. Then another kingdom, the third kingdom, kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. So I think pretty much that's what happened. So after Babylon came the Medo-Persia, which took over Babylon without even a fight. And then comes the Alexander the Great. We are going to study this detailed descriptions of these kings once we get to the visions of Daniel in chapter 7, 8, and 9 in those places for the visions. But here he is just giving you an idea of what is going to happen. So the first one is the Babylon, and then he is saying there will be an other king inferior to yours. That's the second one, and there is a third, and then which shall rule all over the earth. And verse 40, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, and shall shatter everything, and like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all others. So that's what happened. So when Rome took over, Rome is also referred to as an iron kingdom. So they just threatened or crushed every kind of opposition, and they just ruled like with an iron hand. So that is what he's talking about here. So the fourth kingdom, which is, we are going to later connect this to the Roman kingdom. The fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, the kingdom will break in pieces and crushes all the others. Interesting now, 41. Whereas you saw, so I just want to pause here and say something before I go further. So now what happened? So the Babylonian kingdom, right? So at least from the history, now we have the luxury of looking back at the history and look at what happened. Of course, when we are studying this passage for the first time, we may not be able to notice all those nuances. But now since we have the history behind us, so now we know what happened. So after Babylonian, now they took the Medo-Persians took over. As I said, that they did not even destroy Babylon. They did not do anything because they just, without a bloodshed, they took over Babylon without a fight, without a much fight, I should say. So that's what happened. And then came the other kingdom. The Alexander the Great also pretty much did the same thing without, of course, he defeated the Medo-Persian kings, and then Alexander took over Persian kingdom. And then came the Rome. So each of these kingdoms were taken over by a different dominant kingdom. That is what I'm trying to say. Babylon was taken over by a different kingdom, which is Medo-Persia, and Medo-Persia was taken over by the Greece, the Alexander the Great, their kingdom. But who took over Rome? Nobody. If you look at it, Rome crumbled within itself. First, it became disintegrated into east and west, two pieces, and then again it kind of disintegrated by itself, but piece by piece. Of course, this Ottoman Turks and all, they took over, but that was a later time after this disintegration happened. So my point is that it is not like the first three cases where some kingdom came and then just took over the whole thing. So the Rome did not taken over by some other kingdom to make a case there. So with that, verse 41, whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with the ceramic clay. So to that point, we are on a pause. We are going to study this in detail when we get to chapter 9, the 70 weeks of Daniel. So 69 weeks, and then there is a pause, and then the 70th week we are going to study later in the book of Revelation. So I talked about that a little bit earlier. So now, for this case, to understand this particular verse, where are we now in all these four kingdoms mentioned? So where are we, right? So Babylon, it's not there. So now the Medo-Persia, that's not there anymore. So that was taken over by Greece. What happened to Greece? Greece was taken over by the Romans, and we saw the Caesar Augustus and Caesars and all the Neros and all that. We studied all that. But then what happened was, the Rome was not taken over by any other kingdom per se, but it was dissolved or disintegrated. So what is going to happen in the end days is it is going to come back. It is going to come back as a Rome, what we saw before. But that is what he is saying. So of course it is not with that kind of power. One other thing you need to understand in this image, look at the gold, the power, the grand, the value at the top. By the time you get to the bottom, so it is just diminishing in value, diminishing in power, diminishing all the way down. So by the time you get to the end of this, towards the feet, although it is still the iron represents Rome. Of course, you don't have to make that case right now, because I'm just giving you the answer here. So iron represents Rome for the sake of discussion here. And now this is going to come back. This iron is going to come back, the Rome. But it is also, one other thing it talks about is it is mixed with ceramic clay. It is interesting. There are so many thoughts on this. What is this ceramic clay is going to be and all that. So let's read one more time this verse to understand this. Whereas you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. So that means partly of iron is the partly of the people that ruled Rome. So again, I want you to keep in mind whenever you see Rome, don't just take the western side of the Rome, because that is the major mistake a lot of scholars do. Sometimes they take only Rome, Italy, Pope and all that. So that is a big mistake. When you talk about Rome in the Roman Empire, you have to take the Byzantine Empire, the eastern leg of it, which actually lasted more than the western side. So whenever you see Rome or the iron we are talking about here as a metaphor, so you need to consider the whole picture. So not just one. That's why I showed you the map. So keep that in mind. So all that, whenever you see Rome, you have to include everything. Otherwise, we are going to do a big mistake. So that's what we are seeing here. So this iron represents the Rome. But it is going to, we see there is going to be a mixture of iron mixed with ceramic clay. So verse 41 there. And 42. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron, right? So this iron legs, the image, if you remember the image that I showed you earlier, what Nebuchadnezzar saw, this image, the legs of iron. And then by the time it gets to the feet, the 10 feet, the toes are also iron, but now mixed with clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. So whenever this is going to happen, when it gets to the feet, so whenever it gets to this part of it, it is going to be fragile. It's not going to stick properly with the people, whatever they are ruling with. So that's what the point is. Now verse 43. As you saw iron mixed with the ceramic clay, right, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. So here is one thing. So whatever it comes to the point of the toes, this is not going to be there's not going to be a unified kingdom. In other words, there's going to be a kingdom where they will get along. So they are not going to get along with each other. So that is the point. So now that is what that verse explains. And verse 44, and in the days of these kings. So now what is he saying is, whenever you see this combination of the kings, which represented the 10 toes, which is partially of clay and iron and all that. So whenever that happens, right, it's a future thing. Whenever that happens, in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. So that is the stone that is going to come and hit these 10 toes and destroy everything. So that's what we saw in the image also. So in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, all the kingdoms that were before, including the Rome, including this iron thing that we are talking about, and it shall stand forever. That is the promise of the whole Bible, the gospel, so that Jesus Christ is the promised Messiah for the Jewish people. But they were waiting for this promised Messiah to come and establish his kingdom. But in fact, they did not see his first coming. They were expecting only his second coming, and they missed it. So now what happens is, he now came in the first coming. He died for us. He paid the penalty for our sin. He is going to come back. He is going to establish the king as a fulfillment of the prophecies of all the Old Testament. At that time, every Jew will believe in Christ, in the Messiah, Jesus Christ, because now they realize, there was a first coming and there was a second coming. So all this time, they did not realize the first coming and the second coming, and they did not recognize him. And that's why we studied that in John. He came to his own, and his own did not recognize him. So that is the concept. So somebody explained this like, if you are standing on a mountain and you look at towards the other side, you see there was the other side of it, but then only when you get closer to, there may be another peak in the middle, so that peak is not visible if you are just glancing towards the other side. So that the peak in the middle of this mountains is the first coming. So they did not see that first coming. Of course, there are prophecies which also tells about his first coming. So what do you make of Isaiah 53? Isaiah 53 clearly says he is going to come and suffer. He is going to die. That part they did not take. Only the part they took was the second coming, which is, of course, we are studying. He is going to come back and establish his kingdom. He is going to rule forever and ever. They liked that part and they were focused only on that. So anyway, going back to 44, and in the days of these kings, when this happens, this 10 toes, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So all the kingdoms of this earth will be destroyed. So sometimes people say Satan rules this earth. The Satan in opposition to God rules this earth. That's why we see so much of evil, so much of all kinds of things that are happening, because Satan rules this earth. And when this happens, when the verse 44 happens, when Jesus Christ comes back, he is going to destroy all the kingdoms of this earth. In fact, we clearly see in the book of Revelation, he is going to throw Satan and Antichrist in the lake of fire. So everything will be taken out. All the sin, curse, sorrow, pain, everything will be taken out, and Jesus is going to establish his kingdom forever. So that is the future. That is the blessed hope, everybody, we believe. So we are waiting for his rapture, and we are waiting for the events that are taking place, and especially the things that are happening. The lawlessness will grow, and some of the things like hints that we see through these prophecies, and we look at the things that are happening around. Yeah, we see, there's something happening. And somebody said this, look at Israel, then you'll know more, right? For 2,000 years, there was no country Israel. Now you have Israel on the map, because we need Israel for all these end time prophecies to be fulfilled. Without Israel being in their own land, these end time prophecies will not be fulfilled. So now we have Israel in their own land. And now we are seeing some peace treaties coming along. So you see some of these peace treaties coming along. But when we get to a point that this Antichrist, whoever that may be, comes on the stage, and he makes a very firm commitment and a peace treaty with Israel, and then we are going to see. So in other words, what I'm saying is, we are at the very end times. A lot of things happening, especially that it gives me goosebumps when I read the newspapers, and some of these things very matches perfectly with the prophecies. Yeah, we are very close to the end times. I'm not saying this will happen next 2 years or next 5 years. I'm not setting a time, because I don't know. Bible clearly says we don't know the day or the time, but I am seeing so many things happening, one after the other. So anyway, that's my point right there. And verse 45, inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver and gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain and its interpretation is sure. So now Daniel finally explains to the king, this is the future of what is going to happen. After you, there will be kingdoms, and towards the end of the kingdom, the 10 toes, and during the 10 toes, when the kings rule that time, so it will come to an end. So he makes it certain this is how it is going to end. Verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face. This is remarkable, right? So this is a guy, he had supreme authority, nobody else had that kind of power. Even not the Persians, So for example, I'll give you on the fly, when Daniel was put in the lion's den because of trickery of the ministers, those who hated him. King wanted to deliver Daniel from the den of lions because he loved Daniel. And because of the law that was signed, nobody could change. So that means the Persians are following a certain law. Even the king could not change. But Nebuchadnezzar is not like that. He just if you don't like the person, their heads are rolled off. If you don't like this Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, throw them in the fiery furnace. That is what we are seeing here. So what I am trying to say is Nebuchadnezzar is a kind of a unique character with unsurpassing power, at least during that time. So that is the kind of the guy we are talking about here, the King Nebuchadnezzar. So this guy, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel. In other words, he is worshipping Daniel. If anybody humbles himself before or giving a value to the other person, that is what worship is. Sometimes people don't know what worship is. So worship is basically you are setting a value to a person or a thing. So that is what what is the value that you are setting? That is the worship basically it's talking about. So here Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. So that's what you do to a god, right? So 47. The king answered Daniel and said, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of the kings, and the revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret." So the king's mind was blown out. He just thought, okay, Daniel must be a god. So he worshipped him. That is what it offering incense and all that. And then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he had made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. So I think this is when Daniel got his promotion after explaining this dream. But I personally believe later on he might have completed his 3-year training. So even after this training, so because it was a program that he talked about in the first chapter, a 3-year program, even at that time, that's why king could say in the first chapter, remember, king thought that he was 10 times better than everybody because this kind of thing happened in between. So now he was able to explain it to the king. So now king thought, 10 times better. So that is the reason why that kind of exaltation of him. 49. Also Daniel petitioned the king. He said Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So what does that mean? That means because now Daniel did not do all this by himself. He took his friends' help in prayer. They were praying together, and God revealed to him. So he did not want to just ignore his friends. So he recommended, or he petitioned to the king about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he set them over the province. So in other words, they promoted these 4 guys. And Daniel was the top. He sat at the gate. The sat at the gate is a word that is used commonly in the Old Testament. In the ancient literature is the one who is a kind of a judge. Who is probably, in other words, Daniel is like a Supreme Court Chief Justice. So he sat at the gate of the king. In other words, he is like he is the one, he is judging everybody at the king's court. He is at the gate of, we see that Lord sitting at the gate. We see a lot of other individuals sitting at the gate and doing the judging. So Daniel is now elevated to that highest position there. We could see that in the other chapters also as well. So now I could have said that I have completed chapter 2 because you did not catch me skipping some things in the middle. So, so I don't want to do that, but I want to go back and then point out one thing. But if I have to explain that, I need another full session. So let me give you a hint and then I'll come back to you. So verse 43, and as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of woman, seed of man, right? So now you are talking about 2 groups of people here. What are the 2 groups? One group is they, whatever, we don't know what they are, right? So it says they will mingle with the seed of men. So the second group is the seed of men, which is very clear. We know that is the seed of man is humans. So what is the other they? So they has to be something else than the seed of men. Did you notice that? So they will not mingle with the seed of men. So that's interesting. I don't know why it is there, but it is there for a reason. I don't want to skip it because I could easily skip it. You didn't notice me and stop me. What is that there? So now the point I'm trying to make is point out 43, verse 43. They will mingle with the seed of man. It is very, very clear. So it has to be two groups. I don't know what that they represents, but I have a feeling I'm going to explain that in the next session. So next session, I want to take a break and a little bit detour, just to make a point on this they. Who are they? So I'm going to explain that. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be freaking. It's going to be scary. I'm going to say that up front. But this helps me better explain the things that are written in the Bible. And sometimes people ask a lot of questions, so we need to understand these minute details which will help us to understand. So I'm going to take a detour and explain. It is going to be interesting. So verse 43, I'm going to explain what they represents here. At least I think you agree with me, they is not the seed of man, because the seed of man is very clear, because it has to be two different grammatically, when there is no other way you can explain this. They will mingle with the seed of man, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with the clay. And also iron represents the Rome, the people of Rome, or the humans, but then the murky clay represents something else. So we are going to study what that represents. So that is what my point was. I will take you to explain next week. It's going to be a departure from Daniel chapter 2, but we will cover this and then we'll come back to chapter 3 later. So next week is going to be interesting out of the regular thing. So thank you for watching, and if you are not a subscriber, please do subscribe to my videos, and if you like these videos, click on the like button, and we will continue next week, especially studying what happened, who are the they that represents in verse 43. And please share this with your friends, and see you next week. Thank you for watching.